problems we have cannot be solved at the same level of thinking with which we created them. Albert Einstein. There was a fun promotion created earlier in my career to help promote new technologies and coatings for exterior finishes for cookware. The title of the project was Think Outside the Pan. Yeah, I know it's a little simplistic and a bit corny, but it worked. It drew attention at all the trade shows that year. It generated engagement of and sales for these new coatings, and the tagline stuck around for quite a while and ended up being an internal slogan for looking at what we were doing and always looking for ways to challenge what we had been doing to date. How often do we do that in product? Doing things the same way because that's how we've always been doing them. How often are we thinking outside the pan and looking down new channels for new ideas? Now, more than ever, we need to explore new ideas, new materials, and new technologies. In this, the post-COVID world that is emerging, everything is being challenged. Consumers want innovation, so now is the time. We need to challenge the conventional thinking often encountered in the development of cookware and bakeware, and that brings us to today's topic. Listen in to hear how to leverage metals science and explore deeper into metals engineering. Let's now not just think outside the pan, but inside, outside, and upside down. Welcome. My name is Fran Groesbeck, and you're listening to What's Cooking with the Cookware Manufacturers Association. Today, we are excited to have Michael Pfeifer from Industrial Metallurgists, LLC. In this podcast, we're going to explore how to leverage metal science to save time and money. You can find out more about Industrial Metallurgists at imetllc.com. That's imetllc.com. And the CMA, of course, at cookware.org. Hi, Michael. Welcome to our podcast.
Good morning, Fran.
And where are you joining us from today?
From Northbrook, Illinois, which is a northern suburb of Chicago.
Wonderful place. And where hopefully next year we will see the Housewares show reappear back at McCormick Center. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Why don't we jump right in, and can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and Industrial Metallurgists?
So I'm a metallurgical engineer. I've been working as a metallurgical engineer for over 25 years. And all my experience has been working with companies to help them engineer the metals or materials used in their products. It could be helping with material selection for product development, material selection for cost reduction or quality improvement. Also, writing specifications, working with supplier evaluation people to evaluate suppliers, and also helping with doing root cause analysis when there are problems, such as when there are manufacturing quality problems or supplier quality problems, or when a product fails during testing or during use. Evaluations have to be done of the metals in order to figure out, as the first step to figuring out the root cause of the problem.
Incredible. That's a lot of great support services, especially for our members, where metal is a big part of what we do. So can you tell our listeners a little bit more about what does leveraging metals science mean?
Well, metal science is related to understanding the relationship between the properties of a metal and its composition and microstructure and the ways that the metal is manipulated to get it into its shape. And metals engineering applies metal science to making engineering decisions. It can be design decisions or supplier selection and evaluation decisions, or manufacturing process development, as well as doing root cause analysis and failure analysis. And so it's the application so doing metals engineering requires an understanding of metal science and applying that understanding to real world engineering decisions that we face all the time.
And we talked about this before in one of our previous chats, that it's not just about, I had referenced from my product development days, the not knowing what 202 versus 304 does to my finished product. But yours goes beyond that. It goes earlier in that. It goes into the actual forming and manufacturing and what you can save and do better on that end.
Right. When selecting materials, it's important to think about all of the requirements for a particular component. I have to think about the mechanical properties, strength, and hardness or elongation. We also think about the weight or its mass. We also have to think about their ease of forming properties. How easy is it to form the material into the desired shape? Or if you're going to be joining parts together, the ease of weldability or soldering or brazing. And then also, of course, there's reliability. So corrosion resistance and wear resistance, and some other things. but the corrosion aware are two things that are important for cookware. And so when designing components, it's important to be thinking about all the requirements at one time, not just focusing only on mechanical properties, and to think about ease of forming, because it's not good to select a material. It doesn't help if you select a material that's inexpensive for cost, to keep the cost down, but then is difficult to fabricate the component out of that material, because then you're just passing the cost on. Costs are going to come up in terms of quality issues. So there has to be an optimization of the design to take into account all of the requirements, including manufacturability, and then select the alloy and coatings and other materials that meet all of the requirements, not just a few.
It's really interesting and really important. And every time we chat, I think back to the days that I wish I knew this when I was doing product development. I've mentioned before my belief that the questions you don't ask are the ones that end up haunting you or you come to face. And that we often, going back to the title of this podcast, we do the same things the same way, and we don't think outside the pan and about these different features because we're not aware they're there. And I love that we're bringing this awareness to our members, that this is not only important to consider, but could save them time and money in the whole process. Can we touch on a little bit how metals engineering fits in with design as well as manufacturing?
So when designing for any component, it doesn't make any difference whether it's cookware or automotive or appliances or toys or medical device. For any application, when designing a component, there are two generic aspects of a component that can be engineered. It's the form of the component, its shape, its size, dimensions, different features that are in mechanical features, and then the materials. And we can, by leveraging both of those and by engineering both form and materials, it's possible to come up with an optimal design that meets all of the performance and reliability requirements at the lowest possible total cost. And total cost means not just the cost to buy the material, but also manufacturing costs and ease and quality issues that might come up. And also there's thinking about just the risks to meeting design schedules. So we have to think about, what materials are going to be risky to try to use from the perspective of the timeline for a particular product development. So metals engineering fits in with product design by thinking about the engineering of the metals and the other materials, while the mechanical engineers are thinking about engineering of the form of the component. So mechanical engineers typically are focused on the form. They don't have a lot of metallurgy training. Maybe they had one class in college, maybe it was a long time ago. And so I think that there are considerations that are often overlooked because there's, the expertise and the perspective is missing from a lot of design groups.
It's a really good point. And we'll touch a little bit later on that further education, because that's something you do bring to our members. Let's take a quick break here to remind everyone that you are listening to the What's Cooking podcast from the Cookware Manufacturers Association. Check out our website, cookware.org, for more information on our guests from today's podcast, as well as all of the great benefits the CMA has to offer. Learn about our incredible network, our timely industry reports, our engineering standards, our committees, our partner discounts, marketing resources, and more. Now let's get back to the podcast. But what you just touched on, we deal with a lot of different issues in our metals. So you don't just deal with the forming of, say an aluminum fry pan, but you also deal with post-forming a coated metal material. And a lot of these current processes have challenges. And maybe in exploring metals engineering, metal science, we could find new answers to some of the problems we've been assuming were just unavoidable or no way around.
Right. And I think that's a good point. I think at a lot of places, the certain problems are just seen as being kind of just the way of life, just the way it is, a fact of life. And I'm not saying that metals engineering can solve everything, but I think there are certainly certain problems chronic problems that companies live with that could be avoided.
Awesome. That's incredible for our members to know. Do you have any examples of what happens when metals engineering is overlooked?
Well, then you get the problem that I mentioned, where people will select a material based on a certain set of a partial set of requirements, not thinking about all of them, and then the problems that arise could either be product quality issues or the product, they have difficulty passing product testing, so the product isn't released on time, or there's manufacturing issues. That's one thing. So the metals engine, overlooking the metals engineering, to me, in one respect, is not, it's not just the engineering aspect you're missing out, but also the perspective for looking at, for making decisions and solving problems, because every different engineering discipline or non-engineering discipline even brings different perspectives to solving problems and making decisions. So that's one thing. And then the other problem that rises up, and again, it's a point of missing perspective, is when problems arise, quality problems arise, people often don't know the steps to take to get to the root cause of the problem. And for example, one time I had someone give me a call on the phone. They wanted me to try to help them determine the root cause of a problem they were having with their product just by talking about it on the phone. And I said, well, you have to send me the thing, and I can analyze it. I can't do anything over the phone. Even with pictures, I couldn't do anything. And so they sent me the product, and I analyzed it, and based on the analysis, figured out what the problem was. And that's the first step. So in solving problems, quality problems, the first step is often doing a metallurgical analysis. But because the perspective is missing, people try just getting together in a room and talking about the problem and trying to figure it out just by talking about it, which is not very productive.
No, you make two really good points there that I think about from the product development side and manufacturing side, which is one, that you have all these perspectives, right? We're using this slogan right now, Stronger Together, because we really do believe that it's an important time for everyone in the cookware and bakeware market to come together. In creating a product, it's the same message, and everyone's perspective is important, whether it's the retail buyer, the sourcing person, the packaging person, the engineer, the product developer. Everybody brings their perspective, and when you work together, you make the product stronger. The other thing is this analysis is taking that time to use all the resources, send someone like you the piece and analyze, instead of going around in the same circles. And sometimes that one analysis can bring all the answers that someone's looking for.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just many times I just get the analysis, and it's just very the answer is just pops right out. But without doing the analysis, it's impossible to know.
We face that in the coding side, because it's sometimes what you can't see that's causing the problem, and you don't know that without the analysis. It's interesting. I've mentioned this to you before, we ran into a major problem, went months and months in circles about why there was this one failure happening. And I forgot how we got to the end result, but it was the substrate, it was the metal. There was something wrong with the alloy, and by switching the alloy, but wasted months.
Yeah, and it's because people just don't know. People aren't familiar with the analysis techniques and the steps to take, and so they just simply don't even think about it. It's just they're not familiar enough with using analyses to know what to do. And it takes a little bit of time, and of course it costs money, but it's there's a trade-off between the money spent on doing the analysis and how much time they're going to end up wasting trying to figure, muddling through the problem.
And then on the overall perspective, there's a small investment to do an initial consultation or analysis, but the long-term time and money savings, especially as the world reopens, it feels like we're right back to, if not worse, with time crunch.
The thing is, it's actually going to save time. Imagine, to have a resource. Companies, once they're a certain size and they're using a certain amount of materials, they probably should have someone on staff. But if they don't, there's plenty of experienced people out there who've got metallurgy degrees and polymer degrees and other degrees in other aspects of materials engineering. And sometimes a 1 hour discussion, sometimes even a 15-minute discussion can be very insightful, and it's worth it. It's worth to have that discussion, and it's going to end up saving a lot of time. It's going to save. So when you talk about the time crunch, it's you can what is it? It's a stitch in time saves 9.
Yeah.
If you're going to give quotes, you quote Albert Einstein, I guess I quote Ben Franklin. Spend a few minutes to get expert input so that it ends up saving time in the back end.
So this is a great point. We had talked about, you just touched on the fact that some companies may not have metal engineers on staff. What can industrial metallurgists do to help companies that don't have a metals engineer on staff?
So we, provide engineering consulting services. So if people are interested, they can just, call or email to set up a time to talk. And an initial conference, there's no charge for an initial, discussion. So there's me, and there's also lots of other, very qualified people out there as well who can help out.
That's fantastic. And I know you've been partners with the CMA for quite a few years, and you offer our members a discount of 25% on the training, correct?
That's right. Yes.
So I'm going to make sure that everybody knows about that with the promotion of this podcast. And are there any other takeaways you want to leave our listeners and our members with as we wrap this up?
No, I think we covered everything.
Well, I'm going to encourage them to definitely reach out to you. I believe this is a really important topic and very timely with what we're facing, because it's both innovation and that time savings. What that means to what we do in this industry is huge. Metals for cookware and bakeware are the core of what we do.
Sure.
It could be new ideas and ways forward. It could be incredible. Well, I thank you so much for joining us today, Michael. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And that's a wrap for this podcast. You've been listening to What's Cooking with the Cookware Manufacturers Association. Thank you again to Michael of Industrial Metallurgists for joining us today. My name is Fran Groesbeck. We are recording this podcast for the CMA, and you can find my contact information and more at our website, cookware.org. You'll find this podcast and others in the members section of cookware.org website, as well as on iTunes, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Stitcher, Google Play, and so many more. At the CMA, we can't say it enough. Our members are our number one priority, and the association is a proven valuable resource giving our members access to our exclusive engineering standards with a long and trusted industrial history since 1922. Watch for our big 100th centennial celebration next year. Timely statistical reporting, resources for retailers, and the best members network in the industry. And of course, important information on topics critical to our industry via our podcasts like this one. Stay safe, be well, and happy cooking, everyone.